Oh, well, that took long enough. Hello, everyone. Evening. Oh, golly. Sorry about that. Mild chaos. Can everyone hear me? Are you there? Let's do this thing. Oh, golly. Hopefully you're hearing sound. I'm here. Hello, hello, hello. Ah, yes. It's another newsy catch-uppy one because we've had a pile. I had a few pre-records in a pile. So hello everyone, it's live. Look, I can even prove it by going gigantic face. Hello, it's me. Yo. Let's do this thing, shall we? Let's go for a bit of. Well, to be honest, let's start with the COVID stats as fresh off the conveyor belt this morning. First thing to point out is I've updated. So this bit, I've updated this used to be road transport. I've now updated it to just the cars and taxis column because all the others are about people moving. You know, cycling is people mostly. The bus services are, and the bus services are, and National Rail is just ridership. It's not any freight stuff. It's just looking at passengers. So it makes sense actually to have all of this as passengers. So I've updated this. I've also updated the title to COVID-19 travel recovery. So yes, so I've updated that, and you can see a variety of things going on. Firstly, strike time. The most important thing about the strikes. Okay, there's a bit of there's a disconnect here, but that's just because we were missing that data. But you can see that the strikes had a very short-term impact. Hopefully, when we get the rest of the data here, this nice data here, it'll show that the rebound continues back to where it was, like that. But you can see that there has been no lasting significant impact from the strikes thus far. A load of new ones have been announced, but we'll get to that momentarily. And if we zoom in, you can see that kind of the impact there they've had. That week basically was a big drop in rail ridership. These numbers are rolling 7-day averages, I think. Are they, or have I not updated them as such? Oh no, they're not. These ones are. These ones are not. So you can see there's been this sort of the strikes have hit hard that week, but we've climbed back. And this is the provisional. This is obviously the kind of largely provisional data that will get revised upwards. So there's a good chance we'll be back to where we were before, which is around 90%. So that's the COVID data. I probably need to put in one of these yellow things to explain the strikes, don't I? Yeah, put one in like here. Yeah, I'll get to that. In any case, that's that. Next thing. Oh, actually, that's it. That's. I'm going to do the news after the intro. So, yeah, let's get cracking, shall we? Without further ado, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. The Intercity 225 fades away. It's not an LNER1, and no, it's not an Intercity 225. It's not a Class 91 being chomped up at Rotherham either. Thanks, Raphael. Actually, no, it was Hazel's. Thanks, Hazel's, for the reference. So, okay, firstly the news, but also Raphael's asked, what are the regular waves in cars and taxis? It's just weekend versus weekday cycles. Oh, crikey. The first joint tune-in. Kate Pangborn is here. Crikey. Well, there's... Here is some for our first joint tune-in. Warmed up with a bit of Metro, yes or no, and what I had to say about Huddigan. Yeah, the Huddigan roundabout. What a waste of time that was. Anyway, the news. No, you haven't missed the news. The news is about it's long news and it's post. I'm going to potentially start bringing news back into post credits again. I don't know. I like jazzing around with things. In any case, the news. Some Pratt on Pratt carnage, which is fun. This is off weird like right wing version of Twitter. But what's funny about this is how much it's just fun to just look at the two idiots becoming angry with each other. So, I mean, there are lots of fun telling things in here. Firstly, it's a reminder that Elon Musk's fortune is entirely built off the back of state subsidies and like tax breaks. And also, you know, he's not a self-made man. He's just lobbied hard for tax breaks and for lots of government cash. As with all tech bros, strongly recommend everyone goes and reads Paris Marx's book on tech futurism for transport, Road to Nowhere. It's very good. Go read it. Paris Marx's book is excellent. Anyway, Donald Trump says, when Elon Musk came to the White House asking me for help on all of his many subsidized projects. Actually, you know what's funny is this doesn't read like Trump. This isn't like a Trump tweet. Very bad. Very, very disappointing. Very bad. Very bad, man. Actually, it's kind of disappointingly un-Trumpian in the way that it's been written, almost like a statement. Anyway, yeah, it's just like, whether it's electric cars that don't drive long enough. Saying for help with all his many subsidized projects, whether it's electric cars that don't drive long enough, driverless cars that crash, or rocket ships to nowhere. I absolutely love it. It's just absolute body slam from Donald Trump to Elon Musk here. Without which subsidies, he'd be worthless. And telling me how he was a big Trump fan and Republican, I could have said drop to your knees and beg, and he would have done it. I just absolutely love this. It's so funny. I absorbing all of the energy of this Pratt begging to just saying whatever he has to say to just become richer, and just this guy, just the absolute, just this guy, just he has no principles and doesn't care and just loves to feel like he's number one. That's all he cares about, is feeling like he's number one. So get these two in a room together, and oh my god, yeah, it's great. Yeah, love this. I like this. It's great. So. Oh, yeah, that. Donald Trump. Anyway, so the things to take away from this is just the key reminder that Musk's money comes from him groveling with whoever's in power. And he's unhappy at the moment because whoever's in power isn't paying him much attention. What else? Oh, yeah, abolish the Treasury is now a policy of a potential PM. Admittedly, not a very nice person. Kemi Badenoch is not a very nice person at all. But... she has announced that she would break up the Treasury if she became Prime Minister. I mean, admittedly, her version of abolish the Treasury is to just bring all the power into number 10, like everything else, which is bad. But the point is that the abolishment of the Treasury is very much a mainstream policy position at this point. So people really need to start paying attention to my abolish the Treasury hashtag. And in fact, Stein, formerly of the ONS, I think, possibly still of the ONS, wrote a Guardian piece about this year, I think, in May. So maybe we get them on to talk about it and talk about what the abolishing the Treasury might actually look like. In any case, yeah, Kemi Badenoch has announced that she'll break up the Treasury if PM. So there we go. As Exchequer Secretary, I saw firsthand the barriers to economic growth. We need to change the way the Treasury works. Her Office for Economic Growth would be reportable to the PM, with all departmental spending passing through it. So basically what she's just described is Treasury, but moved under the control of PM to avoid the classic number 10, number 11 battle. She wants to inject stronger democratic accountability into spending plans. So everything she's describing is bad, but fundamentally the point is that it's becoming a policy of the Treasury. And I like this, because if this makes Treasury get a little bit bloody nervous that their existence is not an eternal fact of, eternal singularity of truth, then maybe they'll bugger off a bit. So yeah. I like this. It's good. Anyway, it's now a policy of potential PM. So noted. Right. Oh, this is a fun tweet. Bart did a little thread trying to explain why they have non-standard track gauge. And to be fair, they didn't say this was the actual reason. They just said this is the kind of the theory that the clearest theory they've got was based on a report done by Parsons Brinkerhoff, which is nonsense. I have to say, having read through having had a quick flick through that report, it looks like absolute nonsense. I've got a reasonable amount of experience of looking at wind loading blowing trains over. And the centre of gravity of these vehicles will be so low that the likelihood of them being blown over, even if it was standard gauge track, is just incredibly low. It's just not. So it's just nonsense. And I think it's all about politics and about the fact that a wider track gauge prevents their tracks being bought or used for freight or bought, by one of the kind of the class ones or whatever it is. I think they were nervous of that. But what it ultimately meant is a system that is very difficult to upgrade. It's difficult to buy trains for, and generally just a bad. Standard gauge track is useful for it's a good thing for a reason. So anyway, the logic is from the dumpster. That report might well be the reason why it happened, but that's really just a very skin deep reasoning. Actually, the bigger reasons will be political underneath that. Indeed. So interesting little thread though, as I replies to it. So go in and find that. Shall I make my miniaturized face appear? I have the technology. Hello everyone. Right, this thing. Yes, this is exactly as stupid as it looks. I've seen a few renders of this. It was on DZine, and it's just, yeah, it's exactly as stupid as it looks. This is, firstly, just a horrendous. You're never going to get a safety case to work for this if it goes any faster than a bicycle. And also, it's the size of a car, so it's going to have a capacity to match. Like, this is useless. Just run a tram. If you can justify this thing, then why? Well, it's just. To be fair, this follows a similar logic to the urban VLR, which we'll get to. But yeah, this thing. Thanks for sending me it. It is very stupid. Very, very silly. Very silly. Right, the other thing. Are you a young person? Because you've potentially got goodies. Because a musical artist who I'll freely admit I've never heard of before, called H, is collaborating with an energy drink company, Relentless, a good way to ruin your cardiovascular system. But the collaboration with H and Relentless to provide free train tickets to under 25s this summer. I don't exactly know what the limitations are, but go to the website, just search HS2, which I think is quite funny. HS2, hey. I don't think HS2 have had any involvement in this. Oh, I'd be very surprised. But in any case, you can see what they've done. They've done a little like classic British Rail sort of board here. So the H knocking it out of the park. I don't know who H is. I don't know what music they create. It's probably fun. You know, the kids these days are pretty cool. They're all right. The kids, they're doing all right. I mean, you know, despite everything. So yeah, free train ticket. If you're under 25, and which I know quite a few of you are watching this, then you might have free train tickets somehow. Go find out and tell me about it and whether this actually works. I don't think this is H from Steps. I think this is H off of Gen Z. In any case, goodies. What else? Oh yeah, here's the tweet. Sorry, here's H. Official H. Yeah. Hashtag without limits. I don't know. But h-s2.com, as in AITCH-s2.com. Go there and find things out. But you get free travel to under 25, so you can go and look at festivals, concerts, cultural events, and generally have some fun. This is great. Love it. It's good stuff. What else? Oh, talking of other nice things, I'm starting with some nice news. It may not last this way. Is it just like travel vouchers for a competition? Is it not actually a widespread giveaway? Oh well, it's a bit like the bus news, which I didn't put in here, which is that there's going to be there's going to be a limit on bus fees of £2, upper cap of £2 on all bus fees. How that actually works in practice, I don't know. But anyway, that's separate news, which I couldn't get to the bottom of exactly how that works, so I haven't included it here. Anywho, yeah, the Barnardos have been doing this for ages, which is where you go and stand on the top of the Forth Bridge, and it's an awesome opportunity, and the tickets are all sold out. So none of us can do it. If you have got a ticket, brilliant. But they're very, very limited supply, and they're all for charity. So. What else? What else have we got here? Oh, yeah. We have got here me needing to just slightly adjust my graphics. There we are. It's a bit better, isn't it? Oh. What have we got going on? Population. The census data is out. There's loads to unpick from the census data. Loads and loads and loads. One of the interesting things is about the changes in population, the movement in population, and we're seeing patterns. Well, we're seeing the kind of the de-ruralisation of Wales, so seeing growth in the city, but actually generally it looks like population of Wales is just kind of decreasing, either from people leaving or likewise ruralisation of all these areas is decreasing. You know, all these fringe kind of areas. This is a bit interesting, but again, there's Scunny, lots of places decreasing, whereas we're seeing the urban areas. Increasing population, and some of the semi-urban areas as well. So it's not just in the centre of London we've seen some depopulation as well. We've seen the kind of more vibrant outer areas of London increasing in population. But fundamentally, the urban areas of Britain are increasing in their population quite sizably. This is just a continuing trend towards fewer and fewer people in kind of basically constituencies are getting less and less fair. Urban constituencies that are broadly, substantially kind of left wing and progressive are being less represented less and less well, whereas old crusties with this is not this is not a Venn diagram. It's not a complete Venn diagram. I'm merely describing the general trend. But the rural areas where you have older people who are less interested in the future are depopulating. There's fewer of them, and they're being more represented. So their votes are worth more. Their votes are worth substantially more than people in urban areas. And this is a problem. It's a problem for social cohesion. It's generally it's generally a generational gap there. And it's a problem for our democracy. And is it getting fixed anytime soon? Well, not under this government, and to be honest, not under a changing government either. One of the ways to fix this is through proportional representation, and other ways that we need to redraw boundaries of constituencies even more to even them up in terms of population. But another way is understanding why these shifts are happening. Why these shifts continue to happen. Well, the reality is people have a more sustainable lifestyle when they're living in urban areas. It's a much more sustainable way to live is for humans to all be close together, because we don't have to drive everywhere. We can walk and get close to each other, hang out without, and public transport works better when we have higher densities. This is an interesting one. Anyway, lots of other census data. I'm sure loads of people in here that can pick out some of the interesting stuff. Massive growth in Exeter, and this is indeed the one down here is Exeter overspill. Yeah, for sure. There's all kind of, but there's all the kind of the urban areas that are kind of at the bottom there, along from Exeter as well. It's quite an expansion. In any case, census data, lots of interesting stuff I'm sure to pick out of there. It'll be very interesting. Similar sorts of data is the change in CO2 emissions in London. This is kind of an interesting little graphic that popped up that I thought was interesting, which is, okay, so you have massive reduction in emissions in the centre of London, in these areas in London, massive reduction in road transport emissions. You see an increase of increases in Harrow, Enfield, Merton, Croydon, Bromley, Bexley and Havering. Particularly substantial in Havering and Bexley, major increases, a 10% increase in road transport emissions. This is not good. What's this related to? Why is this increasing? What's changing to result in this increase in road usage? Well, have a look at public transport provision in these areas is what I would suggest doing, and see how it's been impacted by. And this is 2019 versus 2016, so it's a change over 3 years. What level of it's just interesting to think about. Why is that happening? Why are these patterns happening? Thoughts on a postcard, but it's very interesting to pick that out. I thought it's an interesting little thing to look at. Talking of calamities, this leads to the bigger picture in the UK, which is that the Climate Change Commission have brought out their progress report on what the government is getting up to in terms of how government is doing on net zero delivery, and bearing in mind that almost all of the, I think, in fact, pretty much all of the prime ministerial contender or the Tory party leadership contenders are just either body slamming or ignoring net zero. Very likely that they'll be pulling away from it. Very likely that they'll be either watering down or entirely pulling away from net zero as a target for the country. We are on a slide towards kind of full ethno-fascism, just as a reminder to everyone. And the Climate Change Committee has been saying shocking, devastating indictment, abject failure. Those are the phrases that are being used in this report. James Murray from coming in Business Green to kind of point out some of these things. But pretty damning lack of delivery on net zero. And there's some other things. Simon Evans here, Dr. Simon Evans, picking out some interesting points, which is the fact that gas being more expensive is helping the UK reach its climate goals by accident, and also so that's fine. But reaching climate goals saves the UK a lot of GDP if that is achieved. But it's found that the UK government strategy is just simply not going to deliver net zero. Only 8 out of 50 key indicators are on track. And there are no credible plans for 61% of those greenhouse gas emissions cuts. Funny that. Yeah, it's almost as if that's the thing that I've been saying the whole time, and lots of us have been. So there's this credible policies thing here, which has this green level to achieving net zero, which is only a close fraction of the gap to meet the targets being here. But the reality is that the current delivery pathway of what's actually being delivered is as bad as it possibly could be. There it is. They're not good at all. So Oh wait, I'm doing this the wrong way around, isn't it? Sorry, forgive me. This is the zero here. Hello to everyone watching RailNet for the first time. This is how we roll. So the delivery pathway here in red is what government is saying it can do to reach net zero by 2050. Sorry. The green here is actually what's being proposed in terms of the actual policies, and you can see that's not net zero. That's not zero. Zero is down here. This is zero. This is not zero. You can see we're just not achieving it. It's not happening. So this is not good, folks. Not good at all. Yeah. What else have we got? We've also got, the CCC's actual report themselves, which I should have gone into high resolution. This is a pretty poor resolution image I took off Twitter. We'll go through the report at some point, I think. You can see here. So this is our one that we care a lot about, which is surface transport. Surface transport. You can see they're talking about credible plans. These credible plans, by the way, are EVs. So not credible, frankly. But anyway, EVs. You see some risks here to a substantial amount of the savings that they're quoting, and significant risk and insufficient plans for quite a sizable chunk else. The other issue, so they're saying credible plans for electricity supply. Well, that's easy. Electricity supply is easy. Everything else, shocking. So buildings, just very, all at risk, pretty much entirely at risk of sorting that out. Manufacturing and construction, likewise. Agriculture and land use, ditto. And engineered removals, which is fiction, by the way, is just significant risk base is not happening. So, yeah, energy is easy. That's easy. We can do that. Transport, this green here is going to start getting smaller as the CCC realise that the EV thing ain't working out. So, yeah, we'll see. But anyway, that's that. That's where we're at. Not good, frankly. Not good. Oh, talking of which, it's another thing that came out. Wendy Morton, the rail minister, told regional business leaders that changes in travel patterns, inverted commas, means that the Ely North Junction upgrade may be put on hold. Except that, of course, this is all about... there's lots of good stuff going on. Actually, I'll go to that. Deirdre, I'll come back to your comment in a second. Lots of good... rail freight, is 120% and climate. It's like massive. It's actually, maybe it's not quite that much, but anyway, if Simon's in the chat, you can tell us. But we are... rail freight is well above pre-COVID levels. Rail freight is in absolute rude health. And Ely North Junction is one of the main, if not the main, freight bottlenecks for the whole country because of how much comes in at Felixstowe. So this needs fixing, just absolutely needs fixing. Essentially, at all costs, needs fixing. And yes, it's very messy because of all the flat ground and the level crossings and the fact that it's on a pudding, geologically. But fix it. It needs fixing at any cost. This is a proof of how inadequate our business case modelling and the use of business case modelling in the first place is for something like this. This just needs fixing at any cost. It needs to be a case of... how much does it? You go to the engineers. How much does this cost to fix? You go through and look at it and make sure that they're not taking the piss, and then you build it, no matter what that number says. It just needs to happen, and it's not happening. It's just, very, very frustrating. 450 million quid sounds like a lot of money. It is not a lot of money. Given that a flipping roundabout got rebuilt for £1 billion recently, I don't, on the A14 or whatever, or the A1 or whatever it was, Black Cat, wasn't it, done for like the best part of £1 billion. 450 million quid for this rail upgrade is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Oh, so I'm getting angry about that. To pause my anger, I'm going to go big face and then answer some questions. What have we got here? Chuck all your comments in at me. Right, Michael C has asked, do I think Crossrail could help some of the emissions problems in East London? Potentially, yeah, potentially. Further reason for Silvertown Tunnel is a bad idea, absolutely. East London is rubbish for north to south rail links. Yeah, that's very true. Another rail crossing would be really good. Rather than the Silvertown Tunnel, they could have just built another rail crossing and actually connected it up through. They could extend the overground down from Barking Riverside and then tie in with some overground connections that way. And build it up. Me and Tim were out there over the weekend having a look. So, let's see what else. Deirdre, yes, frustratingly, the census was taken at a time when those in central London with second homes had moved to the southwest in panic, yeah, for sure. But also, the census was taken and there were not options to say, this is a major problem with the census data that's made me very angry, is that the census data said, don't tell us what you would normally be doing, just say what you're doing now. Which is like, yeah, but in the middle of a pandemic, everything's to hell. What a strange way to conduct such an important data collection exercise. Yeah, that was... serious problem. Thanks, Deirdre, yeah. Let's see. Oh, there's lots of interesting conversations going on. Yeah. Aren't EVs bigger than normal cars? They are generally, because they're often SUVs, because the car industry is just going for build as big and as destructive a car as you possibly can, because that means you're selling more car and making more profit. I've just noticed that that OBS has already put on my mouth delay. I'm already delayed a bit. Anyway, sorry about the sound and mouth delay thing. I haven't quite worked out why OBS does this. Thoughts on a postcard. Anyway, yeah. Right, let's get rid of my face and go back to the news. What else are we learning about? Oh yeah, HS2. What is left of HS2 is being wrecked. Yes, 2 stations we're going to pick on. Euston, very interesting piece in Architecture Journal, which was that there are reports that HS2's ambitions for a new Grimshaw-designed station at Euston were downgraded from world-class to highly functional and affordable, according to board papers. Yeah, they've gone for, let's make this incredible and good, because it's 120 years worth of the pathway to the rest of the country from London. No, what's happened is it's been horribly downgraded to shopping mall with some platforms attached to it. Highly functional and affordable. A bit of a euphemism for horrible. The rail group was lambasted for years over its indecision on Euston, which has led to Old Common becoming the temporary London terminus, blah, 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 blah. This is all because of government scrimping and saving and because of oversight development that shouldn't be happening. Huge impact on the way that HS2 will feel to passengers. It should be a grand entrance, and it frankly will not be. It will not feel good. It will not feel grand. It will feel like it's been dumped as an afterthought, and it'll be dominated by horrifying oversight development that will make a right mess of the whole site. The thing that should take priority here is the fact that it is a rail connection in and out of central London. That's the thing that should take priority. It's a massive transport hub. The thing that should take priority is the transport element of this. And what is taking priority is oversight development to attempt to ameliorate costs when it's just £1 billion. Who cares? It's just not a large amount of money. I'm sorry. £1 billion is not a large amount of money when you're talking about 120 years or more, really. Let's face it. And it's all stuff that'll have to be reversed because Euston will have to expand and they'll have to build. It's just horrifying. It's just a real mess. Again, it's scorched earth. It's make sure that you can't actually do anything better. Lock in the half-arsed, half-words attempt. Very frustrating. Very disappointing. The other thing, of course, is that all these big changes mean that all the plans for taking spoil out by rail have been obliterated, and now TfL are being hammered and told to move cycle lanes and reduce cycling provision in order to allow all the lorries with all the spoil to move around. It's just so many levels, dreadful government government getting involved where they really shouldn't be. Andrew Gilligan, when Boris goes, Gilligan will go, and that is the main benefit of Boris going. But he ain't gone yet. He ain't gone yet. Anyway, right, what else? Oh, yeah, of course, Manchester. Engineer behind Manchester Underground Station plan labels HS2 dismissal as not logical. Yeah, this is talking about the fact, it's a point that lots of us have pointed out on Twitter, which is HS2's option comparison report. It's good if you consider that Node 3 thing. So basically, like, you've got the airport station, you've got this coming up here, and then you have this sort of, the thing here, this is the station sort of box here, where the station is going to be, Manchester Piccadilly Station. And this up here is Node 3, so-called Node 3. Down here is the airport station. And this stupid Node 3 is because they're doing their silly scorched earth thing across into Stanage Tunnel. When actually what this should be is following the existing rail alignment up towards the kind of Calder Valley, and then at that point it can curve off and join the M62 alignment up there, which is where NPR should go to get up towards Bradford. So that should be where NPR would be going. But because government's going for its daft sort of up to sort of Stanage Tunnel sort of scorched earth, make sure that nothing good ever gets built proposal, it's locking in a much worse alignment for where the sort of underground station is kind of would be. So it's basically they're stating it will cost a lot more because they're deliberately choosing a stupid option as to where the line will go. For me, this is potentially why they've chosen Stanage, is to make sure that the underground station looks like it's too expensive at Piccadilly. It's absolutely shocking. So yeah, really very frustrating. And report after report is coming through the NC. I'm being quoted a lot. Charlotte Cox is quoting me a lot on the Manchester Evening News, and others. Lots of us are getting, lots of engineers, not just me, are getting involved in saying that this is absolutely the wrong choice. By the way, I do not support the HS2 Phase 2B bill at this point. Until this is an underground station, And while that stupid Node 3 and stupid connection towards Stanage exists as part of the plans, I do not support HS2's connection to Manchester. I think those plans should be opposed until it's corrected, until the plans are corrected and they incorporate a proper connection across to Bradford. So at the moment, I oppose HS2's hybrid bill for Phase 2B, which might be a strange thing as probably one of the UK's loudest proponents for HS2, right? I won't. My threshold of I was happy to support the change to Sheffield from Meadowhall, even though I thought it was the wrong decision. I thought Meadowhall was the right decision, but that felt like a compromise that I could cope with to deal with the local politics. This, no, too far. They've lost me. Talking of other plans that are not that don't match words with cash, the cycling and walking infrastructure strategy 2, so it's like RIS 2 but for cycling and walking. It's been published. It's got a load of kind of general broad themes about increasing the percentage of walking and cycling, fine, but it does not provide the cash to match those. It just says lots of big things, which is partly useful, but there's no the cash that's being asked for is not nearly is not being matched by what Treasury is providing. Funny that. Yeah. Let's go big face and answer some more questions. So what else are people saying? Let me go up here. Up. The census could. David Shepherd is saying the census could easily have had a second column to collect data for COVID changes. Agreed. Yeah. Dave says still hoping for York. I don't care where the the BR2 HQ ends up, because it's going to be a building with a flag on it, an empty building with a flag on it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Yep. Martha is pointing out that of course it was too good to be true that the Tories would actually deliver infrastructure properly. Yep, of course. Absolutely. Let's see. Jack Elliott, they're forcing the hand of people in the future to build the London high-speed through station. Yeah, well, quite. That is, for more on that, see the previous episode on the HS1 and HS2 link. Maybe we'll do another episode where we actually look specifically at that. It's going to feed into a future episode coming up where I list off my top 10 / possibly top 11 UK infrastructure railway mega projects. That's a future episode, by the way. Tease on that one. That should be fun, right? Let's see. Route W12. That's a good. That's a very fun YouTube name. Will a change in current leadership change anything for HS2? Probably not. No. Michael C. The other thing is that they've got the alignment as having a massive tunnel underneath Manchester rather than from the original alignment. Yeah, that's kind of what I was referring to. That Node 3 means they have to have a completely new alignment rather than relying on the existing infrastructure corridor that was a 4-track corridor. It runs quite nicely. The proposed NPR route did that. It followed the Calder line, the lines up towards Summit Tunnel, the old route over the Pennines. It breaks off those and goes over the M62, but it actually that was the route that it followed, and it's the route that I proposed before I saw the NPR plans. That was the route that I actually proposed as well. So, who's suggesting this is the right thing to do? Government is part of their IRP, Matt. Let's see what else. But remember to at me if you've got comments for me. Let's see. Much chat. Lovely. Okay, right. I can't see any more ats with my name, so I'm going to continue with the news. What else is going on? Let's go back to my miniaturized face. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So this is Torsten Bell putting up an interesting little graph here, which shows this is so that these two are the highest earnings. So the highest 10 and 20% earners. And then the lowest 10 and 20% earners are here, and then the green here is median. So this is about earnings as a. It's actually it's the other way around. Sorry, isn't it? That's the highest 10% and 20%. That's the lowest 10% and 20%, and that's the median. These are showing basically the point of understanding the problems that we've got in our economy is that we're living with the inequality surge of the 1980s. So this huge split in, the thing that massively changed in Britain more than ever had before was the difference in between those earning the most and earning the least. Inequality. There are lots of excellent research that shows that, indeed one of Dina's kind of colleagues, that shows that inequality is one of the root causes of lots of social ills, lots of democratic health indicators all come from increased inequality. A more equal society is generally a fairer, better, and happier society as well. And so this huge gap here, and then the next thing is then the stagnation of those salaries. So the inequality reduced, and then it just dropped away again. And just generally all salaries have just dropped because the UK is a dump country. But yeah, the UK is just facing some bigger and bigger chronic problems. And this summer we're going to all then also be bursting into flames because of this heat wave. So it's just a really, really healthy place for us to be. And I know a lot of people are like, well, doom and gloom. It's good for us to be aware of these challenges. Another one here, which is even more doom and gloom, is having a look at the difference between the UK and Ireland when it comes to life expectancy, which is a very, very good measure of the health of a nation, the health of a country, and its kind of general, not just health in terms of like explicit kind of medical health, morbidity, but also more broadly, it's a good indicator of welfare and conditions. Let's have a look here. Oh, look, massive split in the kind of the early 2000s. The early 2010s. There, you notice a bit of a massive split as austerity started to bite. And then, oh look, what happened at that point? So another massive drop. This is austerity. So this is austerity, and this is COVID. And you can see here that this is really representative of how badly the UK did compared to Ireland in terms of our COVID response. And actually what's interesting is if you zoom out, you can see that generally the UK had been doing better. This is the UK. We've been doing better than Ireland down here. This is Ireland. Not doing so well. I don't know why it's ticking across. That's not really fair, is it? Sorry, Ireland. Anyway, through the 2000s, things started kind of merging, and indeed Ireland sort of very much post-austerity, Ireland sort of started tipping above the UK for life expectancy. So this is how, on average, how old you are before you're going to die. Not good. The UK, you can see, is starting to really drop. If anyone's wondering, like, the impact, the Conservative decisions right now are not impacting on just the worst off in society. They're impacting on everyone, absolutely everyone. This country is being torn, systematically dismantled, or rather unsystematically dismantled. Not good. And of course, the fun is that the next Prime Minister is going to be even worse than the previous one. And for example, I think Sajid Javid was suggesting, this cut of fuel duty by 10 pence per litre, which is essentially would cost the same as just making all public transport free. Martha, you're absolutely right. The UK is a failed state. I don't say that lightly. No, we are in a failed state. Our democracy is absolutely not fit for purpose. This is a failing country. It is falling to bits, and it's going to reach a point where a lot of young people. And when I say young people, I mean people under the age of 50, are going to start making decisions about whether they stay and try and attempt to fix this country or whether they leave it and go somewhere that isn't a failed state, which will only kick off an increasing spiral of collapse. I have a Serbian wife. I know what that, she knows what that looks like, and it continues to make me ever less naive about how quickly that can happen. And how hard it is to reverse once you've had that brain drain of all the clever people going, stuff this for a bunch of Sundays. Not good. Has Javid gone? Gareth Williams says Javid's gone. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, our special boy Grant Shapps has gone as well. He was going to go, and then everyone laughed at him, and then he said no. Which is, in a way, he was the only one who said anything like approaching human on the level of like dealing with trans rights. Everyone else has just gone full horrifying homophobic transphobe. Not great. Anyway. Meanwhile, here's our good friend, our boy Justin here on the. Here he is, and someone else I believe who is we talk about our dreadful Prime Minister. She isn't perfect, but Jacinda is not a bad role model. If you're going to have a role model she's reasonably inspirational, given that she's got a wee one and is running things. They have not done the best through COVID. They haven't necessarily pursued zero COVID is a very brave and bold policy for an island because you're just going to live in fear of it arriving at any point. So maybe not the best, but that's one. And maybe not as perfectly progressive as lots of us think. But frankly, compared to the current lot, I would happily take Ardern as a Prime Minister. Anyway, taking Eurostar to get to Europe. Funny that. Very nice. Spain just made short to medium rail travel free from September. Crikey. We're returning to the Auf Wiedersehen pet era, says Martha. Yeah, quite. Anyway. Matt Reed, I'm not sure what you're saying is actually true, but probably. Right. I believe the tweet author recalculated the 10% cost of about 70% of all public transport. Yeah, their thread did recalculate it. So basically, the cost of doing the €9 monthly ticket like Germany did. Yeah, exactly. Meanwhiles, yes, the results of the €9 ticket in Germany are coming in. they're actually seeing the impact of this policy now, which is that traffic congestion has dropped in 23 out of 26 cities in Germany. Traffic in Hamburg specifically is down 20%. Rail use is 60% higher than pre-COVID levels. And as James Gleave points out, hi James, it's almost like if you make public transport good value, people drive less. What a thought. What a thought. Oh, golly. Anyway, so that's all good. Any other meanwhiles? Oh, yeah, that's right. Consultation starts on Swiss Bahn 2050. I remember my Network 2050 proposals that kind of never materialised because Shapps, or rather the Williams review happened and it kind of events moved on around me. More on that later, though. But in any case, they're starting a consultation on, and basically the details of this consultation are they're looking at a horizon of 2050, Perspektivbahn 2050. I can't remember how you'd say 2050, and how do you say the year? Probably like 2050 or something like that. Anyway, the Federal Council has put forward proposals for a further long-term programme of investment in the national rail network, and they're looking at a long-term horizon to 2050, double tracking of the Lutschberg base tunnel, and all sorts of other things, enhanced with the existing network, kind of more intensive use, so that's fine, some more re-signalling and that sort of thing. Basically they're saying it's not so much about speed now, it's about expanding where rail has been left behind, so they're kind of at the point where they've got reasonable speed, although they could definitely still improve some of their journey times in Switzerland anyway. So those proposals then feed into legislation, which will be passed in 2026, and then that defines basically 25 years of investment. And they're expecting more legislation kind of going through the rest of the decade. So there's lots of stuff about this, about Switzerland aiming, they're also aiming for 2050 net zero. And the most recent assessment of long-term rail investment dates from 2012, and it was geared mainly towards easing bottlenecks and enhancing regular interval services with their TAC plan. Bahn 2050 switches to local and regional traffic. So this is looking at, so they've basically done the kind of the core stuff. Now they're looking at the fringes and the regional stuff to try and really boost that market share. And they're looking to go from basically looking to go from 26 billion passenger kilometers to 38 billion passenger kilometers. What is that? Like adding an extra 100? Is that 100% increase? Is that 100% increase? No, it's not. It's like a 50% increase, which is quite substantial. But they are driving these major objectives for long-term kind of viewing. Anyway, there you go. Let's see. David Shepherd, making public transport free would remove all the costs associated with collecting money and revenue protection. Yep, it's true. Matt Reed is saying the free public transport being the same as a 10p reduction in fuel duty. Yeah, not quite, Matt. There's a little bit of nuance to it. It's the same as doing what Germany's done with the €9. It's 5,050. Yeah, that's right. Where are we? Thanks, Raphael. Yeah, I do speak a little bit of German. I just sometimes forget. I don't speak it nearly enough. All good stuff. Imagine having a long-term plan for anything at all. Yeah, I know, right? But it's not all happy and sunshine and roses in the EU though, because the EU has had decades of frankly rubbish transport policy. It's just massively pro highway, particularly at the fringes. Particularly in the areas in the more recently ascended countries that joined the EU. It's just like highways, and likewise, in Serbia, which is not an EU country, but it's attempting in vain to join at some point. The EU has invested loads in highways, and very little in any sort of public transport whatsoever. And they're kind of attempting to maybe reverse this, trying to, but bearing in mind that the EU's policy on rail has been, and it's more like the European Commission, is like the awful third and fourth rail packages that have just been all about like attempting to create Britain's rail system, but across the whole of the EU. But they were basically, it's kind of indicative of the fact that EU and European bureaucratic kind of machine is about 10 years too slow. So at the point where they were setting up the fourth rail package, they were like, oh yeah, things seem to be working pretty well in the UK. They've got great rail ridership increases. Fantastic. Correlation does not mean causation, and that's no better example. 10 years later, our system has collapsed. It's collapsed totally, and the EU is having it foisted on itself. So just shocking. A proper mess. So the EU is far from rail policy is a disaster, and they could do so much more to assert. You just have a look at John Worth desperately trying to get across all the borders in the EU by rail. It's just a mess, an absolute mess. So the EU could do so much more. David Shepherd, I've had anti-EU people blaming the EU for railway privatisation. Well, yes, to an extent, to be honest. The EU, or rather the European Commission, has quite a lot to blame for that. Adam Evans is saying, I've watched quite a few Serbian cab rides and there are loads of EU flags on bits of infrastructure. There are a few now, but by and large, it's been minimal investment, and most of the investments come from Russia and China. EU investment is pretty minimal when it comes to railways in Serbia. They might have shoved a flag or two up, but I can promise you the investment that they've put in compared to Russia and China is absolutely minimal. The EU, bad at railways, frankly. It doesn't mean we should end the EU and leave the EU. It means that we should get involved and change that. There is no better model. Any other model is going to end up looking basically like the EU for collaboration across borders. The point is that the EU is bad at it and it should change. The European Parliament, European Commission, particularly the European Commission, is like obsessed with private capital and with business market autonomy. Lots of things about the EU are very bad, folks. It doesn't mean that the EU, we should have left the EU, but lots of things about the EU are very, very bad. Anyway. Pandemic GHG emissions. This is an interesting post by Glenn Peters here. Hi, Glenn. Looking at fossil CO2 emissions and how much they declined during 2020. This is interesting because it's basically these sort of different... So this is power here, and the light one is 2019, the dark one is 2020. And you can see there's just kind of general reduction, but not much of a change, really, in power generation. And it's a major source, not much change. Industry, see... quite a major drop at the start of the year and then back to kind of almost normal again by the end. Residential, almost no change. Ground transport, major change. Major reduction in emissions through 2020, which, I mean, as you'd expect, really. But yeah, that's quite an interesting one. So it's quite interesting to compare those. Likewise, domestic aviation. And what's interesting is that ground transport is mostly recovered. Domestic aviation has not. And good, that's a good thing. International bunkers, I don't know what that is. What is that? Yeah, that's also quite a substantial drop. I don't know what that is, though. What is international bunkers, everyone? Tell me. Yes. So, right, yeah, pandemic GHG emissions. Oh, and talking about which, homeworking. There's lots of stats and data here. Oh, golly, this is still the news, and we're 48 minutes. This is why I put it after the opening credits. Right, homeworking. In the UK has more than doubled between October and December 2019. Basically, up to March 2022. Which, if we remember, March 2022 is... I'm just going to pull it up here. Can I find the right window? March 2022 was... We were still kind of at 60% of rail, so it's not... we weren't fully recovered. Everything was kind of low down. However, the ONS has said that home working has doubled. Fine, yeah. From 5 million to 10 million people. So that's an increase from how much of the workforce? Like 5% of the workforce to 10% of the workforce, or 7.5% of the workforce to 15% of the workforce. So it's not like it's a radical alteration. A lot of people are saying, it's huge. Still not. Like, most people still have to be where they have to go somewhere to do the work. But it's a trend that has been accelerated. We're seeing more of this, and that's now being accelerated quite substantially. So it's quite interesting to see that. What it did, of course, spark off is absolute roasting hot takes from libertarian right-wing cranks like Tim Worstall, coming up with sort of buggers the case for HS2, doesn't it? It's like, no, it doesn't. And then the discussion under here proved that this guy, who works for, or at least is affiliated with, the Adam Smith Institute, is exactly as much of a muppet as you'd expect. Just basically a paid crank, paid in order to ignore evidence and to have bad opinions. That's kind of how these things work. Paid to have these bad opinions. I think maybe you're right. International bunkers, I think, is shipping, Adam. You're right. I think that is what that is. Yes, I don't, Martha. I don't believe in open access as well. I know lots of people say it's good for certain things, but actually, I think it just eats away at what should be a revenue stream for the state operator. I don't think we should close it off, but I do think that it should be more heavily regulated, perhaps than it is. Although in the UK, it's pretty heavily regulated. Anyway. So a little bit of good news again. East West Rail is still happening-ish, ? Because there's some, a new train is currently run for the first time since 1993 between Swanbourne to Bletchley, which is nice. There it is. It's a freight train, but it's carrying bits for East West Rail. But East West Rail is kind of still happening. It is happening. Look, great, marvellous. You'll notice a glaring lack of OLE. Well, yeah, we all know about that, don't we? let's move on from that. And then the last thing is strikes. Well, not only this, actually, because the RMT have just said they're going to do another strike on the 27th. 27th of July, I presume, is another RMT strike. So ASLEF have balloted for strikes. It's an overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming yes to strikes result. Also, I believe the TSSA have also voted in favour of strikes. There are some nuances in amongst the various management levels in Network Rail, but the TSSA are also striking. So it's going to be a summer of railway strikes. Hooray. Anyway, right, strikes. Solidarity to everyone striking, but absolutely make strikes happen. That's the only way at the moment we can hold government to account on how much they're just shredding the industry. Oh, right. Adam Evans is pointing out, in terms of the EU directive about private rail operation, just be like Belgium and straight up ignore it. Yep, agreed. That's what everyone should do. Section 2. Let's talk about the Shapps tweet. The tweet. Well, here's his tweet. As union bosses waste time touring television studios, bearing in mind while this was happening, he was probably creating his glossy video to run as potential PM. Anyway, I'm getting on with the job at hand and modernising our railway. You're absolutely not. You're not doing that. This £1 billion investment will replace outdated Victorian infrastructure with cutting-edge digital signalling on the East Coast Mainline. Well, there's a lot wrong with that. And Wendy Morton, the rail minister, got involved in this as well, parroting the Victorian infrastructure nonsense, which we're going to dive into momentarily. But also, along with this, came a DFT-produced video, which we're going to watch now. Let's watch it, shall we? Let's watch this little video. Let's enjoy some happy Shapps time.
200 years ago, Britain invented the railway, but that means that some of the technology behind our railways are somewhat outdated, like critical signalling systems, for example, which currently divides the track into sections and allows just one train in any one section at any one time. And if a train has to slow down or stop, it quickly creates knock-on delays right down the line. But now we're transforming the East Coast Mainline by investing over £1 billion in new digital signalling. Instead of old trackside traffic lights, the driver instead has a screen inside their cab, constantly updated with the latest information. It means shorter delays, faster journeys, and more capacity on existing lines, all of which signals a very bright future for Britain's railways.
I don't think that's how you drive a train, Grant. But anyway, that was our special boy, Grant Shapps there. That was quite loud, I do apologise. Anyway. So, let us break this down. Because there's a lot in here, and so it's time to dust off our old friend, the buzzer. So let's just very quickly go through this as quickly as I possibly can, and actually pick out some of these things. So everything he says, let's just have a look at it all, shall we? So, thing that he says, number one, 200 years ago, Britain invented the railway. Let's have a think about this, because, firstly, no, we didn't. There's two elements to this, right? The first thing is 200 years ago. Well, no, the railways arrived in Britain by several measures. It was not 200 years ago. The modern railway arrived about 200 years ago. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway was the first truly modern railway, right? Liverpool and Manchester. It was not the Stockton Darlington. The Stockton Darlington was in my eyes the last of the previous era. The first truly modern railway was the Liverpool and Manchester. So, okay, modern railways 200 years ago in Britain. Yeah, that's fine. Ish. But it's not true, and it's jingoistic to suggest that the railways are a British thing, because we were merely kind of apprehending quite a lot of other... firstly, they arrived in Britain in 1594, so that's quite a lot more than 200 years ago. We had things that you and I would recognise as railways in the middle of the 1700s. So the 1760s, you'd have looked at things and gone, that's a railway. I absolutely recognise that as a railway. But even before that, even before they arrived in Britain, the Germans had been using them. The Germans had been developing the system that you see in front of you is a German system, and it's a guideway. It's a guideway with a wheel that reduce friction, and a guideway so that you don't steer it. It's self-steered. That for me is a form of permanent way. It's a railway. And the Greeks had this. They created limestone railways as early as like 600 BC. So we've had railways for a very long time. People often say, "Oh, it's a new transient technology." And they don't. The railways are as fundamental as the wheel in terms of how you move things around. That low friction interface between two strong things, which today is defined by steel on steel, is like that interface is as fundamental as the circularity of the wheel. It's just a fundamental part of moving things around with low energy. So sorry, very very much false on this one. Sorry, Grant. Let's go. Let's see what else our special boy has to say. Oh, but that means that some of the technology behind our railways are somewhat outdated. Does it? Why does? So the railway created, even if you look back at just Liverpool and Manchester, so in what way is any... Firstly, what are we using from then that we use now? Because back in the 1830s, we weren't using signalling that in any way reflects what anything has looked like for decades and decades. What possible technology are we using that has anything to do with 200 years ago? And I get his implication that, yeah, we've had railways for a long time, and that means they're outdated. But it's not true, because actually we've had, as we'll talk about momentarily, we've had technology updates in terms of signalling decades on and decades on. You know, every few decades we've had radical leaps, and indeed have been world leading. And you know, the thing that this government keeps attempting to be, we have been world leading in terms of our signalling technology in this country successively. And more recently. So this is very much a false one. What else is he saying? So now he's explaining absolute block signalling, which, like, yeah, okay, fine. Absolute block signalling is right. But the thing that's wrong here is the suggestion that this is the reason why we have knock-on delays right down the line. Because what he's describing here, you'd still have knock-on delays down the line if this was moving block signalling. So I'm sure everyone on here knows the difference. Absolute block signalling is where you have these essentially fixed, not necessarily by the signal posts, but fixed position blocks set geographically fixed. A train enters it and nothing else can enter the block while a train is in the block, and it goes out and then something else can enter. And you kind of end up with what he showed on the video, right? Which is where things enter the blocks and fine. A couple of things. Firstly, this is the system that's being introduced at the moment. They're not introducing moving block signaling. Moving block, is where the block follows the train around, and as the train gets faster, the block expands. As the train gets slower, the block gets smaller. And it means that you can theoretically squeeze a few more trains on the track. But fundamentally, whether you've got moving or absolute block signaling, you're still going to end up with... You still have headways. You still have things getting queued up when you haven't fixed the kind of the bottlenecks on the line. So, sorry, this is a false. And the next thing he's saying is we're transforming the East Coast Mainline. We're transforming the East Coast Mainline by investing over £1 billion in new digital signalling. No, he's not, because this was proposed years and years ago, and it actually dates back to it actually dates back to Labour years. But certainly, ETCS has been in slow development since the late 2000s. It was deployed in 2011 on the Cambrian lines. And we've seen it rolling out on Thameslink in 2018, Crossrail, but this has been proposed for rolling out for a long time, well before Shapps was in brief. So this is very much a false. Oh, dear me. Anyway, what's next? So, instead of old trackside traffic lights, the driver instead has a screen inside their cab, constantly updated with the latest information. Well, that is true. That is kind of how ETCS and ERTMS works. It is in-cab stuff. So that's true. There's no avoiding. That is a true thing. It means shorter delays, fast journeys, and more capacity on existing lines. Well, no, it doesn't, actually. Because in lots of cases on the East Coast Mainline, the East Coast Mainline is running as... You know, the capacity on the line is not going to be improved by changing from absolute to moving block signalling, because there are fundamental bottlenecks like Welwyn Viaduct, like Newark Flat Crossing. These fundamental bottleneck issues, everything in Peterborough still, bottleneck issues that just don't get resolved. The mixed traffic challenge that is the reason why you need HS2. None of that gets solved. So actually, no, you know what? It doesn't really mean more capacity, not to the extent that he is trying to suggest. And it doesn't really mean faster journeys either. Yeah, no. So this is false. This is getting a false. What else is he saying? Oh yeah, he's saying all of which signals a very bright future for Britain's railways. No, it doesn't. This is just a necessary, essentially a like-for-like renewal, or certainly it's just a renewal of the signalling system with the next stage of upgrade. But it's not a radical change. I'm sorry. Anyone who's trying to suggest that is doing government's job for them, and it needs to have a little think about the reality, because it does not represent a fundamental change. Don't get me wrong. Traffic management is fantastic, very useful. In-cab signalling is fantastic, very useful. Removing line-side equipment is very useful. But the reason this is important, the reason we need ETCS, this project is fantastic, by the way. Don't let his stupid video take away from the fact this is fantastic, necessary work. It's really cutting edge stuff. Frustrating they've de-scoped so they don't include King's Cross, but anyway, the reason why this is necessary is because we could not renew all the signalling up the East Coast Mainline conventionally, and that's true for all the signalling that is coming. A lot of signalling, a lot of interlocking is coming up for needing renewal, and we just can't do it conventionally. We don't have the time, we don't have the skilled people, we don't have the resources, and so ETCS is an absolutely necessary and vital part of doing that, achieving that, pulling it together. So that's a buzz. The DFT. There are lots of good people in the DFT. Don't just refuse to make these things for him. Just refuse, please. The other thing that frustrates me is not so much that, okay, video fine. They're fairly innocuous, frankly. But what's frustrating is their press release that went with this, which this is an official Department for Transport press release, where they are referring to, well, okay, let's go through this, a variety of buzzes. So the first one is, let's talk about the Victorian infrastructure thing. Let's talk about the this Victorian infrastructure nonsense. £1 billion of government funding will be used to replace outdated Victorian infrastructure with cutting-edge digital signalling technology. This is true bollocks, and we're going to break it down. I know there's lots of questions. In fact, you know what? I'll get to the end of this segment and I'll go through the questions. That's the way to do it. So let's very, very quickly go through signalling history of the East Coast Mainline. So in 1930, there was a massive re-signalling of King's Cross. They did lots of things to re-signal King's Cross Station. They realigned the throat and did quite a lot of things. So 1938 Victorian. So it's already not Victorian. Let's jump to the next thing. Well, let's jump to 1951, which is, this is a picture of York Power Signal Box, actually. Here it is, York Power Signal Box. This was the biggest, let me just remind myself exactly of what the stat is, actually. I think this is the biggest and most complicated power signal box in the world at the time of its opening. That was 1951. And the whole East Coast Mainline continued to have upgrades, power signal boxes installed, right the way through to 1977, where King's Cross Power Signal Box was built, which was, again, absolutely the cutting edge of what power signal boxes could achieve. So all this clever kind of interlocking, very, very clever kind of relay interlocking system, fantastic. 1989, we then jumped to the next, a genuine world-leading leap forwards. Funnily enough, and around about the 70s was when British Rail Research had been developing solid-state interlocking. And in 1989, and they'd started rolling it out by this point. By through the 1980s, it had been rolling out in more and more places, and it really had a breakthrough when it was rolled out as an alternative to relay interlocking on the Highland Main Line. But when it arrived on the East Coast Main Line, the IECC in York, for example, the Integrated Electronic Control Centre in York, which here's a picture of it, in 1989, this was the absolute cutting edge of modern signalling. And it kind of still is right at that cutting edge, and unfortunately, privatisation killed solid state interlocking, or didn't kill it, but it bludgeoned it to the point where it wasn't being sold anymore. There was already an export plan. This was being bought by European railways and others around the world up until the point where privatisation killed it off. Railtrack came in and said, we're not going to do this. We're going to buy an off-the-shelf system from Europe because that's a good idea. When actually they'd had three major projects of what is basically solid-state interlocking, but it was the next the European market had picked it up and was running with it as a technology. CBI, computer-based interlocking, which is the same as solid-state interlocking, but it's just a different name for it. And that was those three projects that were announced by Railtrack. All of them were a disaster and have had to be re-signalled subsequently with SSI or with SSI-capable systems. So solid-state interlocking was seriously very good, and privatisation killed off what could have been a very, very strong export market for us. Very, very frustrating. Never let anyone tell you that the state cannot be enterprising, cannot be innovative. It's bollocks. Anyway, there we go. Sorry, everyone who I'm saying bollocks about, but that's no one minds. I'm going to go through all the questions, don't worry. Anyway, so, and this continues because it doesn't stop there, because we're continuing to re-signal. In 2015, the York Rail Operating Centre opened, and in 2021, King's Cross was moved over to the Rock. So this is completely, this is a totally integrated new signalling systems, all this new clever solid-state interlocking, but now through the Rock. So we're continuing to have, and no one can tell me that what we're looking at on screen at the moment is Victorian. It isn't. So the idea that it's Victorian is bunkum. It's false. So what's the next thing that we're going to see that's false? The idea that this will mean faster, safer, and more regular trains for millions of people. I'm not sure it'll mean safer. The signalling rules are the same. So not sure about that. Faster, no, it's just not. No, I don't think it'll make much difference to timetables. I don't think it'll make much difference. Trains are running pretty fast at the East Coast Mainline at the moment. Regulation, which is the way that you fit different trains with different speeds and different stopping patterns in amongst each other, doesn't really get helped hugely by ETCS and European Rail Traffic Management. The reality is that mixed traffic situation is just a problem. It's just a major problem for route capacity. What else have we got? Oh yeah, that's right. The idea that union leaders brought the nation's railways to a standstill. No, government brought it to a standstill by not negotiating with the unions and actually not trying to rip them off and sack them. And another one, which is, I'm going to shout at Grant Shapps for saying, while union bosses waste time touring television studios and standing on picket lines, they're not wasting their time. They're literally fighting for their jobs, rights, conditions, and for the health of the railway. And he's saying, I'm busy getting on with the job at hand. Well, you're not, though, are you? Because you were making your machinations to run for leader. So, I'm calling this one a major series of false buzzes here. Lots of false buzzes. In any case. Oh, right. We're going to talk about VLR for 15 minutes, and then I'll wrap this up. Oh, that was exciting. Anyway, right, let's go big face while I go through some questions. Lots of questions have appeared. What is... David, what bit to do? Oh, the buzzer. Could I extract this into its own short bit? Oh, maybe I will. Okay, thanks, David. Yeah, maybe I will do that. Right, so... what book is this from? I don't know which book. Which book? Raphael, you'll have to send me another message. Dave is saying Paul and Rebecca Whitewick have a great video on the origins of the railways. Yeah, they do great videos. Long overdue another collaboration. Let's see. Newark Flat Crossing, ? Yes, that's right. Newark Flat Crossing, HST trains, yes. But yeah, technology is a very vague word. Freight couplings being chains? Is that, that's Xander making queries, possibly. Matt Reed, surely even with moving block, there won't be that many more trains. You're absolutely right, Matt. You're absolutely right. You don't fit that many more trains. Originally, it was like, there were suggestions that it would be like 100%. Then it reduced to 50% more capacity. Now it's like 5%, 10% maybe. So they're like pulling back and back. It doesn't mean it's a bad idea. This is just it's the future of signalling. It's just that doesn't mean that it buys as much. It doesn't mean that it's suddenly that dramatic benefit. The reality is that you need more steel to run trains on. Let's see. Surely this has been mooted since 140 miles per hour wasn't allowed. Well, yeah, quite. In-cab signalling was sort of suggest that. But for everyone, we're never going to see 140 miles an hour on the East Coast Mainline, or we shouldn't. We hopefully won't, because that will just hit capacity even harder. Steady progress, right? It's simple, steady progress. Well, it doesn't have to be simple, but steady is good. Harry Tanzer is saying the current signalling bit is not correct. The order, the aspects changing is wrong. Ha, nice. Lovely job. Jack Elliott is saying, would 140 miles an hour on the East Coast Mainline reduce capacity? Yes, it would reduce capacity, because you'd have an even greater speed differential between stopping and non-stop trains. HST trains, are they only doing London to Peterborough or something like that? Yeah, it's just north of King's Cross Station, because they're not doing King's Cross for some reason. Laziness. They're doing north of King's Cross to Stoke Tunnel, so kind of the other side of Peterborough. So they're going through Peterborough, and that's it. They should have shut. Adam Evans is saying they should have shut Shapps up and just let him play with the simulator. HST trains, wasn't the signalling renewed when HSTs came in? A bit, but it's tied in with that, but not entirely connected with it, actually, because the whole point of the HSTs was that they could run within existing signalling blocks. That was kind of part of their point. Let's see, what else? What else have we got here? Questions. Yeah, 140 mile an hour is bad. Lin Man Fu, it would be interesting to have a rail natter about solid state interlocking. Is the protection in software or in the silicon hardware? Ooh. So we did have a discussion a bit about solid state interlocking, didn't we? In the previous episode a while back. That was quite a while back now, wasn't it? The three systems of signaling, interlocking, and control. Go back to that episode where we talk a bit about it. But yeah, maybe we could have someone to come through and actually talk about triple SI. That's something totally different, about SSI. Yeah, that's true. Crikey. What book is it from? I don't know, but you can reverse image search it with a screenshot and it pops up. It's on Wikipedia. It's on Wikipedia for railways, I think, the railway history. David Shepard, the picture we were asked about, what book was the... Oh, yeah, German Things, that's right, yeah. Bob's Rail Relics, VLR question. Here we go, yeah, send your VLR questions in, because it's VLR question time. If we install moving block signaling, says David Shepard, and then open HS2, would that make it easier to hand over the ECML to stopping services? Yes, it would, yeah, definitely would. Wasn't the APT program about already battling the Victorian infrastructure? Yeah, well, yeah, but it wasn't really Victorian even then. So anyway, right. So that was a VLR question. Send your VLR questions. Let's do it. Actually, I need to go to my YouTube channel. You're gonna hear you can briefly hear. Oh no, because I'm live. I'm gonna go into here and just go in to look at the VLR questions. That's my voice briefly. Some VLR questions that were sent here. So I'll get those up as well. So I'll have a look at those. In fact, I'll do that as well. But send in your VLR questions because it is VLR question time. So this is for last week's episode, obviously, where I said I was going to do a bit of a Q&A about VLR because I was going to do a Q&A in this episode. It ended up being quite a short episode. I hope it covered everything that people were interested in and answered the question. So yeah, VLR is very light rail. There are two systems. There's urban VLR, which is basically like small trams, streetcar type, like traditional old streetcars. Urban VLR, and then rural VLR, which is just a bubble car. It's just like a Class 121 for the modern era, like 153 replacement, basically. So that's what those are. So these are the two systems. Here they are, zoomed in, and I've got these as pictures in the background so that I can scribble on them. But I'm going to go back to Big Face, and I'm going to start by answering the first live question, which was from Bob's Rail Relics, which was a VLR question. Could these be an option for the March to Wisbeach line reopening? Well, that's if that reopening happens. The thing for a new railway, remember, we shouldn't be reopening any railways. We should be building new railways that may happen to make use of former alignments. That bit of railway, you have to build it as new. You have to build it from new, which means that you have to do a load of things to satisfy the minimum requirements anyway. That means there's no difference in cost, but they could run. Remember, the rural VLR is not a revolutionary thing, despite its name being Revolution VLR. It's just a lightweight, kind of single car potential multiple unit, but it's a single car sort of that can be coupled up. So it's not revolutionary. So it could run just as any train would. I don't think it represents a major cost saving in infrastructure operation. What it potentially, maybe it is an improvement in terms of general revenue. It maybe allows you to do some cute things with the maintenance, but ultimately there are a lot of fixed costs on a railway corridor anyway. So potentially. Remember to at me for questions because I do miss them. But Martha's just asked one. I'm going to answer it now because so I don't miss it. Question: what does the urban VLR do that a minibus doesn't? It's a very good question. Nothing. Except the one thing, which is a reasonable point, which I think is where they're coming from in trying to progress this system, which is that buses don't drive modal shift in the same way that trams do. And so they're attempting to create a cheap-to-install tram system that drives modal shift because of the fixed infrastructure. So they're trying to jump on a real social phenomenon, which is that fixed infrastructure like tracks in the ground do drive modal shift in the way that buses do not. They can also not be cancelled in the way that you can change a bus route rapidly, and so people are wary of it. Fixed infrastructure has to and can run, so there is an element of politics at play here. So I can understand where they're coming from with the system, and I'm keeping an open mind on it. But Martha, I share your skepticism in that just make it a regular tram by the time you've built this. I do share that point. Right. Lots of questions. Let's see. So, Xander is asking a VLR question, which is, I didn't quite follow the use case of urban VLR. If required capacity is more than a bus, why do the VLR pods hold about the same as a bus? Just make them 3-car units. Yes. I think I've explained that with my answer to Martha, actually, Xander. I think they're trying to have it a small thing because partly it's a bit poddy. So there's a little bit of an element of poddy nonsense about it. So yes, I have that skepticism. But it's partly trying to... It's about as much as a bus. It's trying to capture that like permanent infrastructure modal shift thing. VLR question: thoughts on non-articulated single car trains? Raphael, ask your question again a bit more clearly. I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. Make it more specific to either the urban or rural ones. Adam Evans is asking, will the diesel power pack in the rural VLR be switched to something like JCB's hydrogen combustion engines to go carbon-free somewhat cheaply? They're looking at battery rather than hydrogen, actually. Hydrogen just doesn't have the energy density to fit into a system like that, so they're looking at batteries. But they are looking at batteries now. The rural VLR was a bit before some of the policy changes, actually, so it's a little bit behind the trend on that. It's been a longer development cycle, but they can. It's got racked systems, so they can put more batteries in. Let's see. Right, David Thomason is asking, can they run in multiple unit? The rural VLR can. It's got a coupling system, so it can. That's fine. Urban VLR does not have a coupling system. They're talking about virtual coupling, and I had to just say virtual coupling doesn't exist. And so, but then neither did the autonomy that they're fronting. So. No. They're saying that they could platoon them, but again, I was like, yeah, but platooning doesn't exist. And on a mixed traffic system, I don't think it will exist. So, yeah. What else? Let's see. Ed Fielden. Not sure on progress, but I think a VLR or similar is proposed for Kemble's Cirencester. How do you put it? Is it Cirencester? I've never had to pronounce Cirencester. I've read it. I've never had to say it. It's a bit like Leicester. So is it Cirester? No, it must be Cirencester. I don't know. Someone transliterate for me, please. Their new link. Quite possibly, like, it's been proposed in all sorts of places, but the reality is it's just the same as a 153, lighter and cheaper. Like, fine. Let's see, where are we at? Lin Man Fu. Were the cab ends of the VLR vehicles made of steel or aluminium? Neither seem to have anything like pillars or roll bar. I realise lower speeds, but what if they hit a bridge or HGV? So the urban one does have a crash structure. It does have a capable crash structure. It's designed to sort of the level that you'd expect to see from a bus, so that's fine. The rural VLR is lighter than, like, it is less crash worthy than a 153, or at least it's not designed to the thing is, it satisfies some standards that the 153 didn't, because the 153 was pre all the kind of 1993 rolling stock standards, but it is lighter. It's designed to be lighter weight, so there are some compromises in places, but it does have a better crashworthiness structure than the 153 does in terms of the cab structure. It's better than an HST. I'd rather be in an urban VLR at 125 miles an hour than an HST, frankly. Not that it can reach 125 miles an hour, but anyway. So they've been clever. Let's say clever. Or cute with the way they've applied crashworthiness standards in collaboration with the ORR and the RSSB. And they're trying to do it in order to maximise the lightness and aim for that. They've managed about 1.5 tons per meter, but they're aiming for the 1 ton a meter approach, which is kind of an interesting logic, pulling us back, as I said in the previous episode, back towards timber framed trains in terms of mass. Nathan L, is the selling point of VLR the new track form? From your vid, they seem pretty protective of it. Yeah. For urban VLR, the track form is quite interesting. Yeah, the logic of that is to attempt to minimise the depth of excavation, and therefore you don't need to move services out of the way. The thing that confounded that is then later in the discussion in the conference room, all of the utilities people said, yeah, but we still want our utilities moving. At which point it's like, well, isn't that kind of all the expense anyway? So does that not mean everything that just costs the same anyway? So I'm a little bit like, the track system is interesting, but it sounds like the whole point of it was to avoid utility diversions, and it sounds like they're not wanting to go with that. Whereas I thought the point of this lightweight system is that essentially you take a piece out. If you want to do utility works, you can essentially just take the piece out and do the work there and put it back in. But the utility companies aren't buying that. So there's a bit of a battle to be had with the utilities companies here, I think. JK is asking, could a VLR be built through Woodhead? No. Would a West Yorkshire VLR work? Well, no. West Yorkshire justifies a full metro system, like full heavy rail metro system, let alone a lighter system. But like a full blast metro system is what West Yorkshire. So anything less than that, whether it's tram or whatever, is not really cutting it. So no, I think West Yorkshire and Leeds and Bradford merit. This is just way too low capacity. The urban VLR system is just way too low capacity for it. Right, Raphael. It is Cirencester. That's what I thought, Gareth. Yeah. Gosh, this has changed. Blah, blah, blah. Shifted. Raphael, to answer my own question, the minecart was from a book called Dere Metallica on the Nature of Metals from 1556, apparently by a German. Thanks, Raphael. Yeah, lovely. Uncritical Simon, late, but I can't see how rural VLR even allows higher frequencies. This surely requires double track. Well, it allows higher frequency because of the the cost of theoretically the cost of running it. If it's cheaper to run, then yeah. But we need to see the cost of running. I don't see how it'll actually be cheaper to run. As it's lighter, does it actually require that much less fuel? The actual running costs. Is it that much cheaper? I'm not saying it shouldn't. That's still there are no alternatives for that type of train at the moment. There is no one building a 153 equivalent, so fine. But I don't. Kind of agreed. If we want fixed infrastructure to drive modal shift, what about trolley buses? Yep, very good point. I'd be interested to speak to Kevin Tennant about trolley buses and driving modal shift. Actually, that's a very good question. Cirencester, everyone's saying Cirencester, good. The VLR trains are non-articulated single-car trains. Is there much sense in such rail vehicles, or should modern passenger trains rather be articulated, as in made up of 2 cars? Well, it depends what you're trying to achieve, really. The point of that is that it's small. It's for small volumes, and potentially they can hook up to then run, kind of continue running. But also, it's a very good point, because if you've got those 2 trains, it means that you're actually running twice the number of staff you need. If you've got a staff member on each train, twice the number of staff you need in each vehicle, if you're then joining them at a certain point, compared to so there's a bit of, but then you'd have double the number of staff on the fringes if you had you'd still double the staff if you had 2 articulate trains. It's very much wait and see on some of this stuff. It might go away, but I'm just sort of throwing things out there for us all to think about. Let's go down here. Door Hanger 93. The thing I don't really get is why the VLR tram wastes so much space on a second cab when turning loops are very common internationally and they're designed in very tight turning. Yeah, very good point. I think that's just I think that's a little bit of a non-rail people situation. I think they're trying to be clever, but actually it's just a bit, it doesn't make any sense. I agree, there should be one unidirectional. Remy is asking, the emphasis on the E, so is it Remy? Cardona is asking, correct me on that, I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing. Do you know of any company research institution actually working on virtual coupling platooning? Warwick are, in theory. Warwick, whatever they are, manufacturing group, are attempting it. Whether it actually becomes real is another question. Sounds like utility companies don't want to be held liable for derailments. And it's not about derailments, it's just they don't want to. They want to be able to access their assets as quickly and as easily as possible without spending an extra penny more than they need to. What about an electric version of the VLR? The poddy one, the urban one is battery. The rural one, it'd be interesting if they could put a pantograph on it. Yeah, I don't know, possibly. The whole point is that it's low infrastructure costs. So if it's electrified, then the chances are it's intensive. So you need a bigger vehicle anyway. So there's no point. Maxwell Faffage, in your opinion, could rural VLR run on lines that are currently only used for infrequent freight, e.g. quarrying lines? I think that's one of the considerations. That is one of the possibilities, yeah. Martha's pointing out that the principal cost is driver and conductor. That doesn't change unless you start looking at proof of payment systems, which isn't really tied to vehicle tech. Yeah, absolutely. David Shepherd, how easy is it to park units along the length of a rural VLR or urban VLR so you could couple things up for peak hours? Park units along the length of a rural... I'm not quite sure what you mean, David. SB trains, planes and drives. With platooning, what happens with an engine failure? It can't have one tow the other one virtually. Yeah, if you've got a battery failure, how on earth does that work? It doesn't make any sense. It's pronounced Simi. Lovely, thank you, Matteo. Warwick Manufacturing Group, WMG, yeah, thanks. The urban poddy one could also be trolley, tram wire power, yeah, theoretically. Right, there was a question there are a couple of questions on here. See if we've covered. So this is on the comments from the previous video. So, do I expect that rural VLR will mostly be used to enable new lines to open on marginal passenger numbers, or to reduce operating costs on existing lines? I think it's only going to be useful on lines that have that exist already, where you don't have to reinstate them. So it's a case of reducing the need for major infrastructure upgrades where a mothballed line exists or a freight only line exists. It's not going to work for new lines because there's no particular benefit to running this over another type of service. And to be honest, if you're building a new railway line from new entirely, to justify doing that, you need to have the numbers that a larger train would pull anyway. Next one, some existing line. This is from Stevie and Selby. Some existing lines where I can imagine RVLR being used would be Tamar Valley, Lou Valley, Heart of Wales, Borderlands, Potentially, but the thing is, Borderlands, and some of these are all, Borderlands, for example, is going to become a high-intensity metro line fairly soon. So, how does the less stringent crashworthiness standard fare when it operates in mixed traffic on mainlines? Yeah, fair point. Mixed feelings. It'd be interesting to put that question to them, because I think there are some balances of improvements to less improvement. Yeah. What else? There's another question here. Questions. Two questions from VT 18.16. Does this necessarily need to pass certain EN regulations, as it does not strike confidence that the tiny anti-climbers would actually do anything when coming into contact with, like, a loaded lorry? Or is it relaxed regulation exceptions? Basically, that's a bit of a convoluted question, but basically this is a bit of a hybrid of crashworthiness standards. There's a bit of an optimized approach, which I think is fair enough. Picking and choosing things that they feel like are valid. Fair enough. I think it needs to be stress test. It has a proper robust safety case, and that would change depending on what lines it was running on and amongst what it was running with. The running gear seems to be a freight bogie, correct? Yep, with a yaw damper attached. Yes, it is a freight. It is indeed a freight bogie. These were equipped on heavy coal wagons originally. It raises many questions on running characteristics, especially when the VLR is so very light. It could be worse than a 121 bubble car or class 153. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, okay. I'll close that. That's the questions I've got from that. Virtual coupling is just fiction. Yeah, it doesn't exist. David Shepherd, how will rural VLR and urban VLR cope with the surge in demand during peak hours? Open question. Rural VLR theoretically will run more intensively to deal with peaks. That's sort of a logic, and I can say that fair enough. I think that could work. But rural VLR doesn't. It's just a train. It's a regular train. Deal with it in the same way that ours does. You might run a double service for a couple of hours at peak time. Maxwell Faffage, re-utility companies accessing utilities, they have to block access with local authorities to dig up roads anyway, so surely it's the call of the local authorities, not utility companies. Well, quite. I forgot, Campaign for North East Rail, I forgot to mention my starring role for the promo vid for the Campaign for North East Rail. Go and click on the link, click on the Campaign for North East Rail's YouTube channel link that's now in the chat, and there's a video where I'm in there, and I think I was lending them my voice. And also hinting at, in the previous video, CNER, you'll notice I was hinting at your proposals. Anyway, right. That is those. All it remains for me to do is to say thanks to everyone listening in audio only form. I don't know how well this has worked. Thanks for the people coming for the Q&A there at the end. Any other questions, you can chuck me on Twitter. Or pop in the comments underneath, and I'll maybe reply underneath here. Thanks for all that. Patreon.com/GarethDennis for Patreon to support, to make more of this happen, and to keep this being a thing. PayPal.me/GarethDennis for loose change and abuse, and GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for the chat continuing forever and ever. I haven't posted a link, David Shepherd. I've just said Campaign for North East Rail have just posted a comment, so click on them and you'll get to their page, I think. I think that's how YouTube works. Masquet, if you're out there, I don't know where you are. I hope you're all right, but your website's down, and I haven't heard from you for months, so hopefully you're all right. But if anyone knows if Masquet are all right, then give me a shout. But I hope they're all right. Anyway. What next? Oh yeah, firstly, not next week. Just a reminder to everyone that the Archipelago series has kicked back off again. We've had 2 episodes so far, 56 and 57 in kind of part 2 of the series. And not next week, but the week after, probably on Monday, is the next episode 58, which is Aviation Takes Off. Ooh, what might that mean is happening? But there's a nice picture of a rather fat-looking aircraft flying over Shildon there. Our fairly busy second city of the main capital of our collection of islands in Amphitrus. Anyway, that's that. And next week, excitingly, Alice is joining us. Alice Caldwell-Kelly, Alice Avazandum of Twitter, is joining us to talk about a collection of railway watches and where to find them. This is a working title. It might change depending on what we end up creating. But we're recording that on Friday because it's a pre-record because I'm on holiday next week. But that's episode 123, quite pleasingly. It's just quite a fun one for Alice to be on. Anyway, Alice is joining us. Hooray! It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Recording with Alice, I have the pleasure of being on lots of Alice's shows, and it's just always a lot of fun. Alice is a very naturally funny presenter. She is a... Yes, strong recommend of going and listen to everything that Alice does. Well Edgy Problem Podcast, Trash Future, Kill James Bond. All good fun. And only remains after that is to bring my large noggin back up and say, everyone, oh, that was all right. It's an hour and a half of rail natter. It's enough for me to shut up. Everyone's run off because the episode has ended, obviously. It only remains for me to say thanks, everyone, for joining, particularly to the Pangborn family. Hello, Kate and family. And I'll see everyone. It's a pre-record next week. I'll see you the week after, which should be a fun one as well. It'll be a live one, and it's with a guest, another guest. Ooh, who'll it be though? I will see you all later. Cheerio! Cheerio!